Today, we are thrilled to have a powerhouse in the entertainment industry, a man whose vision and creativity have reshaped Hollywood, Devon Franklin. As a prolific producer, motivational speaker, and best-selling author, Devon has not only carved a niche for himself, but also inspired countless others to pursue their dreams without compromising their values. With a career that spanned through film, television, and publishing, Devon Franklin is known for his compelling storytelling and his ability to bring uplifting, transformative content to the big screen. Devon's journey is a testament to the power of faith, perseverance, and authenticity. In today's episode, Devon will share his insight on harmonizing personal values with professional ambitions and challenges and triumphs of his career, and a vision of the future of entertainment. Whether you're an aspiring filmmaker or creative at heart, or simply looking for a dose of inspiration, this conversation is guaranteed to leave you motivated and empowered. So without further ado, Devon Franklin. Devon, thank you so much for joining us, man. You are our brother. You are our shadow of a mentor. We see you from afar, man. And we want to go briefly about your foundation.
Yeah, we want to start in a foundation. What influenced you, very beginning, the very early influence of the entertainment industry? What was that foundation like? And say, hey, this is where I really want to take my career.
I just remember as far back as I can, just always loving movies and loving, television. Like back in the day growing up, we would go to the movie theater with one of my great aunts. She would take us, and sometimes my mom would take us. We were kids,
Right.
We may have been young, like maybe 6, 7 years old. I remember that. And, I used to love watching movies like Rocky and Back to the Future and The Color Purple. And, I was always enamored with film and with television. We'd watch The Cosby Show, A Different World, Nickelodeon. There was a show called Double Dare we used to watch all the time. It was just like loving, Hollywood. And we used to, I'm from Northern California.
Yeah,
the
Bay
Area.
And so when we would come down here every summer to spend some time with one of my great aunts, my aunt Enos, and every summer, we would go to Universal Studios and do the tour. And so I was just always captivated and inspired by Hollywood and how do you do this? How do you create these images? How do you tell these stories?
Right.
And so my curiosity was sparked from a very young age. And then when my father died when I was 9 years old of a heart attack when he was 36, so that was, my mother didn't have any money for therapy or anything like that. So, my therapy was like entertainment and church.
Yeah.
And then as I, came into my teenage years, I was in plays in school. And because I love Hollywood so much, I started acting, it was in middle school plays and high school plays.
Oh, really?
And then I was like, okay, I gotta go to Hollywood to, try to make it in entertainment. So I knew that as a teenager.
Right.
And focused on it from that day to this.
So just your foundation. Your mother was in the church, and
Yeah, my
she was
mother,
actively
my grandmother, my pretty much my entire family. My great grandfather immigrated from Jamaica.
Really?
And yes, and he was very instrumental in the Seventh-day Adventist faith and helped start a few churches in Northern California.
What did your household look like? Was your mother and your grandmother and your two brothers?
Well, initially, before in the early days, it was my mother, my father, my and my two brothers. I'm the middle of three boys.
Right.
And then, when my father's alcoholism, really kind of, kicked in, I guess you could say, or really went to a place where he could no longer stay in his job. We ended up losing that house. And then we moved in with my grandmother, my grandfather, and my uncles.
Really?
So, yeah. So the four of us were living, there. And so we would all, sleep in the same bed. And then my grandparents.
With your cousins?
With my uncles.
With your uncles?
Yeah, so it was with my grandmother and my grandfather. So they slept in the driveway in the motorhome because they had an RV. And then my uncle slept in their room. And then me and my mother and my brothers, we slept in my grandparents' room.
What?
Yeah.
This is crazy.
Yeah.
So tell us about the environment when you go to school, you come back home. Is it toxic, or is it daunting? Do you feel depressed? How was your state of mind at that time?
I didn't really think much of it. It's like you come home and, my grandmother, when she would get home from work, we would end up, usually playing games or, play cards or play Sorry or whatever. So it really, I didn't really understand, that it was a difficult time. Looking back on it, I can see wow, the four of us all sleeping in the same bed, and while they slept in the driveway. I mean, that's tough. But no, in the moment, I never experienced that. It really wasn't until there was one time I was at school and I was playing on the playground during recess, and a friend of mine, Greg, I can't remember how it came up, but something came up about going to the grocery store and paying, how you pay for groceries.
Yeah.
And then I said something about oh, well, my mom doesn't use money. She uses this other type of, and I didn't know what it was,
Food stamps.
Right, exactly.
That's when the actual stamps, too.
Yeah, literally, before EBT,
Right.
100%, and so Greg was like, oh, you're on welfare. I'm like, no, I'm not on welfare. No, I'm not. And he's like, yes, you are. So then I went home and asked my grandmother, I said, hey, are we on welfare? And then she said, well, yes, your mother is on, government assistance. And that was the first time that I even realized oh, wow. So, things must not be going great. Cause I knew welfare was not necessarily like a good, there wasn't a positive connotation with it,
Exactly.
at least not when I was growing up.
Right.
So, it was moments like that kind of gave me perspective, but independent of that, it was just like this, we're staying with our grandparents and this is what's going on, and then eventually my mother ended up moving us into an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. So me and my brother shared a room, and then she had her own room.
What kind of trouble did you and your brothers get into?
Yeah, are you
growing
really
up with
close?
brothers, I mean, we got into a lot of trouble. We used to break into houses.
Break into houses?
Well, abandoned houses.
Abandoned house, not like
real houses. Yeah.
And did what?
And so we would just
hide and
So
seek.
my oldest brother, he's from Compton, and my father had 2 kids outside of his marriage. Well, outside my mom's marriage. And then so whenever he come to visit, he would always introduce us to the street life.
Well, my older brother, let's give it a little context. My older brother, he was born in Compton, raised in Compton in the 90s. He got in a little bit of gang culture. So he's about 5 years older than us. So my older brother is my first dad kid. So, well, my older sister is the first kid.
yeah.
And then my older brother is the second kid. And when he had, I got a younger brother, so he always kind of toughen us up. Like, now you got to go on the streets, ride the bikes, let's go. He's introduced us to the streets a lot more.
So, I wanted to know, what was your relationship growing up with your brothers, and how did you guys have that bond?
Yeah, I mean,
what kind of trouble did you get into? Did you get into trouble at all?
We did. We fought a lot.
Brothers would teach you how to fight.
That's right.
100%.
That's right. We fought amongst ourselves. We didn't fight with anybody else. And so my older brother, he's more kind of I would say kind of mild-mannered. And I'm kind of in the middle. My younger brother is more like the firecracker. So, depending on what was going on, I don't remember fighting with my older brother a whole lot, but I do remember my younger brother fighting with me and fighting with him. and vice versa. So, so it was good. I mean, we had fun. We had a lot of fun. I mean, we're 3.5 years apart,
Right.
On either side.
Wow, that's really close.
Yeah. And it was good. We had a good time, growing up. We'd ride our bikes and play games. And then we had cousins that didn't live too far. So we spent a lot of time with them too. And
Who was the conscious out of all 3 of you? Who was the one that was like, all right, the moral of us, this is the theme. We are Franklins. This is what we have to do.
Probably my older brother. He definitely, because, he was older. So he had a little bit more of that.
Try to be the leader.
Yeah. He had a little bit more of that perspective. So I would put that in his court.
And now, where did you get your foundation of hustle? You are the hardest working person I ever met in my life. Where did that come from?
Where'd the hustle come from, man?
Growing up in the Bay Area, you do get it.
Yeah, but I think it came from a number of things. One, being that middle child, it does, something to you. There's a real thing around middle children. It's like the oldest one. It's like, all the attention, and even growing up, it was like when you look through the photo books,
Yeah.
you know, there's more pictures of my older brother and my younger brother, not as many of me.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, this is the first one. And then it's like, oh, this is the last one, you know? And so it's like, oh, don't get me wrong, I have pictures, but it was not the same. So as a middle child, you know, like I think we always are fighting for our place.
Yeah.
And so that, you know, contributes to that kind of, you know, you want to call it hustling or grinding or whatever you want to call that, that mentality of like, oh, I got to make it. I got to put in the time. I got to put in the work. I have to make something of myself. And then, you know, combining that with the loss of my father and, you know, the way that I really dealt with all of that was just through achievement. You know, like, all right, let me be on the honor roll and not give my mother a problem and, you know, be involved in academics.
That's where you kind of turn into the man of the house. In a sense.
Yeah. I mean, you know, even though we never felt like that, you know what I mean? But there was probably an element of that at play.
Right.
And so it was really like achievement. You know, don't give my mother, you know, don't put any more on her plate. Don't be a burden to her.
Yeah.
You know, achieve.
Right.
And then, you know, it was like the middle child combined with that. And then my great uncle, who was the pastor of the church that we grew up in, you know, he was kind of, you know, came up through the civil rights era, and he was always about, you know, Black excellence and pull yourself up from your bootstraps and dress for success. And so that was really instilled in us. You know, I mean, I was reading motivational books by like Les Brown, who's one of the greatest motivational speakers. I was reading his books at, you know, 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And going to seminars that he would lead when he came to the Bay Area and reading other books. So it was a combination of all of those things and those elements that laid the foundation for me to say, okay, you know, I gotta get out there and get it, you know, and I gotta be focused and I gotta be determined and I have to be diligent, you know, knowing that I wanted to be in this business so young.
Right.
I was able to make decisions that set me up for this success, you know, back at, you know, 18 years old.
Right.
It was not, you know, and some get it later and that's cool. But for me, I was like, no, I know that Hollywood is going to be the place and I'm going to make every decision I can to set myself up for success.
Did you know you was going to be a great speaker, or you was going to speak in front of millions of people?
No,
Have a
that had nothing. That wasn't even. That has always been something that has been on the side. Always.
Wow. Was you always charismatic even at a young age though?
Right. Did you have a lot of friends? Popular kid?
Yeah, I was popular, sure. You know, and I definitely had a good group of friends, you know, that we all hung out. And,
What'd your friend group look like?
Let's see, it was like my cousin Trent, you know, and my cousin Leon, who were like around the same age. And then at the time, you know, had two female best friends, one named Summer, the other named Chandrika. And we would all, and then as we got into high school, started hanging out with another friend that we met in 7th grade, but didn't become friends until later. Her name is Leisha. She's actually an executive at Netflix.
That's great.
And so we just, you know, even to this day, you know, we all, for the most
Were they
part.
all black, or was it?
Leisha is black. She's mixed. Chandrika's white. White.
Chandrika white?
I know. Chandrika, I know.
She got brains too.
I would love to hear Sandrika's story. Like, what up, though? I'm from the Bay, but I'm white, though.
She is, man.
Shout out to Chandrika. We see you, girl.
We see you. We like that name.
She gonna love that. She gonna love it. When I have my best friend at the time also, he's still a best friend. His name is Armand. He was Persian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had a great.
So there was
diverse.
definitely some, you know, diversity there for sure. And in the Bay Area is very diverse. You know, especially, you know, I went to middle school. I started going to school in elementary school in Richmond, which was predominantly black. And then in middle school and high school, my mother moved us to Albany, which is kind of like an urban suburb.
Right.
And Albany was very, very diverse. It was right next to UC Berkeley. So a lot of UC Berkeley grad students would put their children in school in Albany Middle School and Albany High. So we got, you know, there were students from all around the world that were going to those schools. So I really came up in a very diverse, you know, environment. And also like, you know, but amongst my friend group, you know, the same guy that you see now was me then. I mean, you know, I was always like, on my grind, hustle, like playing basketball, president of the student body.
Hold on.
You know,
Can you play basketball now?
I can play. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
yeah. But I played, in school, freshman and sophomore year. I love basketball. Huge basketball fan. But yeah, I was voted in high school most likely to succeed, and all those things because it was just, man, it was just in me. It was in me.
Wow.
Now, what gets you to USC? You went to USC, right?
I did, yeah.
And now, how did you transition? Like, some people don't even go to college coming from the Bay, and you like, you know what? That's one of the most prestigious schools in Southern California.
Yeah.
Like, how'd you get there? And what you did, is it a scholarship, or did you enroll in like student loans?
Yeah, it was a little bit of student loans and scholarship. I knew that I had to go to school in LA because this is where Hollywood is. So, even though I applied to like NYU and a few other schools, my main focus was getting into a school in LA. And I had applied to USC and UCLA and LMU. And so I got into all three. Whoa. And then initially I was like, yeah,
that boy, you're smart, man. My GPS was back in any school.
It's like you going to secondary school, community college.
That's okay.
For me.
There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's on their journey.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I thought initially that I wanted to go to UCLA. So the way it worked is that UCLA, if you went, at the time, you couldn't actually be a film major until your junior year.
Wow.
Yeah. And then at USC, so even though I got into USC, you had to apply separately for the film undergrad program. So you could get into USC and not get into the film undergrad program, right? So it was just because you got into USC didn't mean that you were going to be able to be a film major.
Yeah. Wow.
So I applied to USC, general admission and as a film major. And so it just so happened that the week that I was going to visit UCLA and USC, I went to UCLA first. I visited. And when I was there, I was like, I like the campus, but I just didn't feel a connection to it.
Yeah.
And then it was like one day I was at UCLA and then I was going to USC to visit. And on the way to USC, my mother said she got some mail from USC. Did you want me to open it? I said, yeah, open it. And it was the rejection letter from the film school.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I got rejected from USC Film School, but got accepted to USC General Admission. So I went to USC and I was disappointed. I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to, after getting that news, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to go to USC.
Right.
Because the only reason why I wanted to go to USC was for the film school.
Right.
But then once I got to USC, I felt like this is where God wanted me to be. That was where God wanted me to be. And so I went ahead and accepted admission at USC and decided that I would do a business major and a film minor. And not getting into the film program was actually a blessing because that film program as an undergraduate major is very, very rigorous.
Yeah.
And you really don't have a lot of time to do much else other than that.
Right.
And so even though the business school was serious, it was a serious program, but it wasn't as, time consuming as the film major. So what happened was I had more time that freshman year to add an internship.
Oh, wow.
And so I knew that, I needed to not only be in LA, but I needed to get experience in entertainment. Yeah.
How did you understand that that's what you need to do? You just
at a young age, it's pretty.
Because I was studying, man. I was, really, absorbing what it took to make it. You know what I mean? I mean, really like, reading and watching movies and researching, the entertainment industry and really just absorbing what it took.
It seemed like he was very disciplined at a young age.
Oh yeah, very much so, very much so.
So your college life, how did that kind of transpire? Did you get into trouble, or you was just minute focus? It's like, I'm going to go to school and then I'm going to get this
and also,
internship.
was you dating at the time too? And what was your lifestyle like during that college period?
Yeah, so the college period, so like freshman year, so there was my first girlfriend was in high school and senior year.
Yeah, okay.
So her and I were together senior year. We broke up, and then there was another girl from high school that we got together like during the summer between senior year and freshman year in college. And then she went to a school in in Santa Cruz, and then I went to USC. So we ended up breaking up.
Right.
So, in terms of just dating around that time, I mean, honestly, I really did not date as much, I mean, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have dated more. But I was just focused. I mean, I would go on dates here and there.
Yeah, of course.
But I really didn't.
There was not like a first love, like a young love at that period.
No. I would say first love probably didn't happen until after college.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So, I was like, okay, what do I have to do to make it? I mean, that's my focus.
100%.
And so freshman year, I stayed at this place called Somerville Place, which is an all-black floor at USC. Wow. And so that was cool. It was like 32 of us, 8 to a suite. So me and my buddy Ian, I just met him, at college, but he's like one of my brothers.
Right.
I mean, however many years later, almost 30 years later. Wow. We're still close to this day. And so he and I would always hang out, and we had a group of friends, we would hang out with, and, we would have fun, what I mean? We would do things on campus. We would go to the movies. There at the time, Jerry's Deli was like the place to be in LA. And so we would go to Jerry's Deli on, Saturday nights, and we had fun. I mean, definitely had fun.
And this was like
this was 96. Yeah, 96, 97.
Oh, was it LA?
Yeah,
When the low riders
yeah. Crenshaw was still happening at that time. Sunset was still happening at that time. So.
How'd you not fall into the glitz and glam of Hollywood and all that social life?
As a young man.
Because it's not what I wanted.
Wow. You knew that at a young age.
I did. You can't be.
You wrote your executive letters.
Yo, this is what I want.
That's crazy. You didn't get distracted.
No, because you can't be tempted by something you don't want.
Wow.
It's not temptation. If I could put a piece of cake here, if you don't want cake, that's not temptation for you. But if I want cake, that's temptation for me.
Yeah. Right.
So for me, I never wanted Hollywood for those things.
Right.
I wanted Hollywood to make, an impact, to express my purpose, so to speak. That's why I wanted to be in it. And even all the speaking and the preaching, that was just something that was happening on the side. I started preaching when I was 15, and just would do it because I was good at it and I liked doing it, but I never looked at that as the path.
Did you see anybody preaching at a young age and then that you emulate? Like, okay, our dad was a pastor, and he was preaching all the time at a young age, but we never took that path like, oh, this is what I wanted to do. Because we grew up in the church as well, and we never okay, we seen our dad go through, different churches and preaching here and there, but we never follow that path. Did you had a similar?
Did you have a mentor, or did you have someone that you wanted to follow after?
Or it was just a spirit?
It was just you. You just I do it on the side. It's what God called me to do.
I would say probably my great uncle. His name was Dr. DJ Williams, and he was the pastor of the church that we grew up in, and that church is still around. My younger brother pastors it now.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. It's called Wings of Love, Maranatha Ministries. Yeah, it's been around for 35 years, 36 years, I think. And so he was more kind of the mentor when it came to, ministry and pastoring. He ordained me as a minister, I was 23 at the church that we grew up in. And so, in terms of preaching, he certainly was someone I looked at. But it was just something that I was asked to do at, 15. It was our second youth day. And so they said, my older brother spoke for the first youth day. So they were like, hey, Devon, why don't you speak for the second one? And I did it. And people were like, oh, my goodness, you need to preach. Wow. You need to go into ministry. And I was like, no, I'm going to Hollywood. That's what I want to do.
We already know that.
But even when I got to LA, even though, I was at USC and ended up getting the internship and all that, part of my, social life was I found a church down here that I was a part of, and they knew of me from the Bay, so they had me preach, regularly.
Really?
So that was.
And this was what age?
This was 18 years old, 18, 19. Yeah, so it's always just been something that's always, been in the mix. But so when you talk about my social life in college, it was a little spiritual, it was a little practical, it was a little, social. But definitely, it was very tunnel vision.
Yeah. So then, all right, you're at USC, and then you get this internship. And when did you start working for entertainment in itself? Okay, this is where I'm at. I'm here. I made
We know about the internship with Will Smith and all that, but we wanted to know what was that first
job
placement?
Okay,
yeah, it was the first job was the management company that was managing him.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the first entertainment job.
Did you get starstruck when you got into that? You're like, oh, man, this is Will Smith. This is crazy.
I mean, it was cool. Yeah. It was very, very cool. I mean, one of my first. So the way I got the internship was my freshman and sophomore year in high school. I played basketball, and then my great aunt Donna bought me a car between my sophomore year and my junior year in high school.
Wow. Okay.
But the stipulation was I had to pay for the car insurance, which meant that I had to get a job.
Right.
So I stopped playing basketball. I got an after-school job at a nonprofit in Oakland, California called Occur. that one of my aunts was, the administrative director, and then there was another guy who was the executive director. And so that executive director went to college with the writer of Set It Off.
Wow.
Yes.
Gotta be worrying about how
Exactly. Exactly.
He was tied to this thing from birth.
That's right. That's right. So when I went to USC and I needed an internship, the executive director, he called his buddy. And so I went and met with his buddy. And the buddy was like, hey, you should go get an internship at Handprint. And I said, what's Handprint? He said, well, it's a company that Benny Medina runs, and they manage Will and Jada and all this, different talent at the time. So I put in my resume. I went in for the internship interview. Right. And, and they asked me why I wanted to be in entertainment. And I told them because I wanted to make change. And I told them about being a Christian and all of these things. And they were like, okay, cool. So getting the internship, it wasn't being in the environment, at times was kind of glamorous, but the job itself was not. It was a lot of filing, a lot of organizing, a lot of, coffee orders and lunch orders. Right. And at the time, faxing was a thing, which doesn't even exist nowadays. Right. So I would go and, get people's faxes and what they needed, or if things had already been faxed, I'd take them and organize them. So it was a lot of that type of work. Mm-hmm. And for that first freshman year, it was not paid. It was unpaid.
Jeez. And so where were you living at the time?
I was living on campus.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was living freshman year. I was living in Somerville Place.
Okay.
So I was there. I did a work study job at the USC Hillel Jewish Center, and then I did the internship.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was always like, man, I gotta make it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Not succeeding is not an option. So I was always like, all right, I'm gonna do all these different things as a way just to make ends meet, And then so then I did it for the freshman year. And what was really cool, like at that time, it was like, it was right around the time when Biggie had passed away.
Yeah.
And so Benny Medina at that time was managing Puffy and J-Lo. And, so it was like, man, I was meeting Mace and Puff and going to award shows and all this stuff, just seeing the entertainment business from a different lens.
Right.
And that for me at, 18, 19 years old, was like, wow, this is cool. And, being able to interface with Will and talk to Jade and all these different things. But the way that I was able to even get any sort of opportunity with them in terms of just even asking them questions was through my service. And I think that's an element that is that's being missed in this generation.
Yeah.
In my experience, this generation is looking to be served instead 100%. Of looking to be of service.
Yes.
And if you have a service mentality, you may have moments of unemployment, but you'll never be out of work.
100%.
Because people will gravitate to those that have a service mindset. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I was serving. I was, okay, great. If you want me to copy this script, I'm going to make sure that there's no pages missing. Mm-hmm. The brads are going to be perfect. Mm-hmm. I'm going to get it to you on time because my work is the only thing that can speak for me. That's it.
Wow.
And so through that service, people started to say, who's this kid that, this intern? And then people say, oh, that's Devon, and this is who he is. And so then when I had questions, they were answering my questions. That was another thing. The only thing that I ever wanted from a person like Will at that time, or Benny Medina at that time, or any of the other talent was information.
Yes.
I don't need you to do anything for me. I just need information.
Yes.
Because if I can get information, then that can help me get to my destination.
Right.
And a lot of times people want other people to do things for them. Oh, can you do this? And can you do that? And I'm like, the best thing someone can do is to give you information.
Yes.
Right. 100%. And then once you have the right information, you can then go and do the right things with it.
Yes.
So for me, it was really about, really soaking that up and understanding the business. I was curious about Hollywood. How does this work? How do you become successful? How do you produce content? What goes into making good movies? What goes into making good music? I was just always curious, it's so curious that one of the assistants at the time, who's one of my close friends now, she was like, oh, you're just so nosy. You're so nosy. And I'm like, man, I just like information.
Yeah.
Because that information was gold to me.
Right.
Because the more I could understand, the more then I could figure out how to navigate the business in a way that could lead to success.
That is crazy. And I think you written that in like Hollywood Commandments.
Yeah.
You have this whole template of the business in itself is like things you need to follow by. How did you, one, not write the book, but also how did you put it out on the format that we can digest?
Yeah, so much of that was just really trying to just at that time, you know, say, okay, well, what are the things that have led to my success at that moment? And so I was like, oh, okay, well, what if I take what if I take the ideas and put it in the framework of commandments, you know? And so then it was like, well, what about the Hollywood commandments? Well, that seems like a bit of an oxymoron, right?
Yeah,
Like, wait,
yeah,
10 commandments, Hollywood, you know, but that's kind of,
Especially church will attack you. Hollywood is
right. Exactly. But you know, it was just because I'm a hybrid.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, then the book is just going to be an extension of that. So being able to do that book at that time was great. To be able to put that knowledge out there and share my story in my story up to that point,
right?
And put some tips in there that I think anybody that reads it then or even reads it now,
will have some,
we'll have some really strong tips to how to navigate success because you know so many people want it so quickly.
Yes,
that instantaneous need for gratification comes with the cost.
Yeah.
Because you have to ask yourself, well, why do I want it so bad and why do I want it so quickly?
Right.
You know, it's like, think about the things that come quickly to us. We don't value them.
Yeah.
100%. Period. You just don't, you know? And so if you want a long lasting career and you want to have impact, it's going to take time.
How do you change your mindset from getting away from the time frame? Like, oh, I got a timeline and I'm getting older. How do you change that and erase it and change your mindset from that?
Pain. Your timeline will produce pain. That's how you know. I'm like when I was 30 years old, I was an executive at Columbia Pictures at the time.
Yes,
and I wanted to be a vice president at 30. And so on my 30th birthday, I wasn't vice president. I was a director of development. So in the studio system, it's like creative executive, director of development, vice president, senior vice president, executive vice president, then president, then chairman.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's
a long ladder.
Yes, that's the ladder. That's the ladder, right? So when you are a VP, it's like you're on your way to becoming a more senior executive.
Right.
Whereas if you're like, you know, director of development or a creative executive, you're perceived more as a junior executive. And so at 30 years old, I was a VP. I was not a VP. I was a director of development. And in my mind, I was like, yo, I need to be VP by 30 because then that's, you know, going to set me up and then I'll have the type of success that I want. And if I'm VP by 30, that means, oh, wow, I'm really on my way.
Yeah.
And when I wasn't VP at 30, you know, I spent most of that birthday depressed.
Wow.
It was, you know, and I remember being in one of my boss's office. And he's like, oh, man, don't worry about it. You'll be all right, you know. But I was just depressed, like not feeling like I was anything, not feeling like I was good enough because I didn't have this title. So about 6 months later, I ended up getting the VP title, still within that 30th year, and nothing changed.
Wow.
And so I was like, wow, you know, we put all this emphasis and we tell ourselves these stories.
Yeah.
Well, if you get this by then it'll mean this.
Right.
It doesn't.
What did you learn from that process?
What I learned from the process is the process. Commit to the process. Like, stop trying to stop creating a false belief about yourself.
Yeah.
That is tethered to a false timeline that then is tethered to a fictitious and fantastical reward that we've created.
Do you think society puts that into our
It's
mindset?
part of the socialization because we see social media and we see these. I mean, even myself, I see younger millionaires, billionaires. I'm like, dang, what am I doing? I'm comparing and also having a timeline effect. So how do we program ourselves outside of that?
Yeah, it's like everybody has their own journey. Every recipe, you know, it has every recipe for success, every recipe for your destiny is going to be different. It's like going through a recipe book and looking at, you know, a recipe for mac and cheese and saying, well, why is it not cooking like the yams? It's like it's two different substances, two different things. And if you try to cook mac and cheese like yams, you're going to ruin it.
Yeah.
And if you try to cook yams like mac and cheese, you're going to ruin that. So we all have our own recipe.
Right.
So the key is just finding out what that is. And again, you can look at someone at a certain age, they may have a certain thing, but nobody knows the infrastructure to any of that.
Yeah.
So all we know is what's being presented. We don't know the truth of that presentation or not. So to try to compare to, you know, one of my friends, Chrissy Metz, she's like, taught me this idea, compare and despair. And so to that point, you know, I do think there is a lot of socialization in putting a lot of a premium on fast.
Yeah.
You know, get it fast and do it fast. But I have seen people get things, you know, fast and they lose it fast too.
Yeah.
Because they don't have the character or the integrity to be able to facilitate long-lasting success. And that can only come through committing to a process. That can only come through committing to learning your field and serving in your field and being dedicated and doing your best to alleviate a timeline. You know, for me, I was always seeing progress. So even though, like, going back to being 30, even though I wasn't a vice president, you know, I was still working on movies and, you know, had a lot of things that were happening. So I never felt like I was stagnant,
right.
Even though I may not have been where I wanted to be. But what I learned was that the process is the result. It's the process. And what happens if we don't enjoy the process and we're focused on a result, then we will get that result and we won't value it.
Jesus.
Because we didn't value the process.
Right.
so it's like you can't harvest what you haven't planted. So if you haven't planted the seed of valuing the process, the result may excite you for a moment, but it's ultimately going to wear off because you didn't plant that with it. You know what I mean?
100%
It's like
with you.
it's like
So give us some seeds that we need to learn from you and say, hey, these are the characteristics that I learned from not getting the process that you didn't want
It
at
was
the age of
observing the process.
yeah, you know.
So what traits did you take away? Say, okay, I built strengths in.
And you said it's something that was significant. Learning to observe the pain.
Yes.
Having the pain and like, okay, this is going to help me grow.
Yes, because like going back to that, you know, and being 30 and not being vice president is one example.
Right.
But like the pain of that, right? It's like, okay, wait, well, why am I in pain? Am I in pain because God has forsaken me? Or am I in pain because I did this to myself? I did it to myself.
Right.
Who told you, Devon, that you needed to be vice president by the time you're 30 or there's a problem with you?
Right.
You told you that. God didn't tell you that.
Your own narrative.
It's my own narrative, right? Why did I create that narrative? Why do any of us create the narrative? Because we don't feel okay inside. If I feel okay inside, then I can deal with life as it is.
Right.
Doesn't mean that I don't have things I aspire to, but I'm not going to become depressed if I don't achieve them in a certain period of time. Why? Because I feel okay.
Right.
If we don't feel okay, then we need all this success. I need to be successful. I need to have a certain amount of money. I need to have a certain stature by a certain age, because if then I will be okay.
Right.
And everybody will know I'm okay. No, it's not how it works. You can get all of that. And if you're not okay before, you're not going to be okay then. And then it becomes even more challenging because we created a fantasy that we based our whole life on. If I could just have these things at this age, I will be okay. Right. And then you get it and you're still not okay. Then you're like, now what? What am I going to do? Who am I? Where am I going? Because the whole thing has been built on sinking sand.
Right.
So for me, you know, when you ask me what I've learned that one, who I am is going to take its organic time to grow and manifest in the earth. One. Two, the process is there to shape me. It's there to help me. You know, if I had gotten the vice president at 30 and, you know, even got my company that I wanted to do a production company at 22, you know, I didn't get a chance to start my own production company until 36. If I had got it at 22, I would have blown it. Why? Because I didn't have the skill set to manage it. Now, when I'm making movies or making television shows, it's built upon, you know, 25, 26 years of experience. And that experience gives me a know-how that then not only can I actually execute, but then companies say, oh, Devon, we actually believe in you, so we're going to invest in you because we believe that you know how to do something that is excellent. So part of the process that I learned was like, okay, this process is here to help me. It's not here to hurt me. So I just have to submit to it. I have to submit to this process, however long this takes. And so 22 wanted to, you know, I had a business plan for my whole production company. At 22, I had it. It was my senior thesis at USC.
Wow.
Don't you get like sad when you look at 22, 23, 24?
No, I didn't get sad about it because once I got out of my own timeline and I could evaluate.
What age did you get out of your own timeline?
I think
Is it still a working process?
I think around 30, around
30,
there.
okay.
I just, you know, because I knew that I wanted to do my own company, but at that point in time, I just really didn't know
Right.
how and when it was going to happen. So I just committed to the process of being an executive at Columbia Pictures and climbing the ladder. That was my focus at that time. And so even though at 22 I had the business plan, you know, for what the company I wanted to create, nobody wanted to fund that. So I had to then just, you know, I got a job as an assistant and then got a job as a junior executive and worked my way up the ladder. And what I learned during that process, I was like, oh, okay. Every job I'm having, I'm getting more experience. I'm building my network. I'm building a competency. So even though I may not have my company, I still can chart progress.
Ooh.
And so that also gave me confidence that I was heading in the right direction, that I was in the right field. You know, it wasn't like I was stagnant. You know, I may not have been where I wanted to be, but I could say, oh, you know what? I just got this opportunity. I'm in this meeting. I'm learning this about script development. So I could see progress.
Right.
So it is important to look for progress in your process. Very important. That's a very important element. But don't put a fictitious demand on a certain thing happening by a certain time, because in my experience, then you can ruin the whole thing. And then one of the things that I learned, you know, in committing to that process is that there's a need to really love the work, you know, and too often we love what we think the result is, but we don't love the work.
100%. We love
You know.
we love
Love
the
the glitz and
results.
glam.
Yeah,
we love
you love
the red carpets.
Yeah, you love the red carpet,
flashing
man.
lights.
Man, you know how much goes into before you can even get on that red carpet.
Right.
So to love the work, to love it, and that's something that, you know, at times I forgot, because then I got caught up in a certain result.
Yeah.
And I had to get back to loving the work, loving it. And as I, you know, at that time, like, you know, loving the work of being an executive and developing material and all that went into that opened up the opportunity for me to write my first book, Produced by Faith. And then that opened the opportunity for me to, you know, go on TV and, you know, I had no idea all these other avenues would open to me because I was committed to the process. And that's another thing I'll say, and then I'll let you guys ask whatever. We mistakenly think we know the type of seed that we are.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We know what we know, but there's a whole lot we don't know. So the process of success, the soil of success, if we plant ourselves in it and we commit to that process and we put no demands on that process, we then start a process to allow who we are to grow. And there are certain things that start to happen. You say, oh, I didn't know I could do that.
Yeah.
I didn't know I could do this.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, I thought I was only going to do this. Oh, well, whoa, there's more in me than I knew. Right? So I get to the place now where I don't let any previous conception of myself to block who I really am. Who I may have been yesterday is not who I'm going to be today.
Right.
What I could do yesterday, I'm going to do something different today. I don't know. Like, you know, I don't know that there's all these other things in me. So I'm going to stay curious. I'm going to stay humble, and I'm going to stay open. I'm going to stay open. There's more about me that I don't know. And if I get locked into like, oh, you know, I'm Devon the producer, I'm Devon the preacher, or Devon the actor, whatever, you know, job title you want to put, if I personally get locked into that, then I can block all the other things out. Versus like, I am Devon. And I'm constantly evolving. I'm constantly expressing. I'm constantly learning. So then in that process, who I really am as a seed can be revealed because I am open to that revelation, and I'm not hindered because it has to be one thing in one way, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense. That was amazing. I mean, we can end the podcast right there.
100%. I mean, we haven't even dived
We didn't even want to dive deep.
Jeez Louise.
We're an entertainment podcast, so we want to learn a little bit about what was your day-to-day operations as an
Okay.
executive.
Also, we're gonna jump forward because we know a little bit of most of your story. I think everybody knows most of your story. But like, you have your company now. You're on Sunset. You have your production deal. What was the day-to-day operation? What was your mandates?
Well, first, what's your day-to-day operation as an executive at Sony? Then you leave Sony, and then you start your own Franklin Entertainment.
Sure. So as a studio executive, you know, day to day was staff meetings. And then, you know, coming out of staff meetings, you know, you have project meetings. You know, most of the time those project meetings would be either the things that you're in production on.
Right.
You know, you would do some meetings on those, especially if some of those movies were in trouble, in terms of what movies you're in post on. What movies are you negotiating for? So there were all these series of meetings that you would have regularly, like business affairs meeting, post-production meeting, production meeting, and then a general kind of staff meeting to talk about material that was being read and the things that we liked and the things that we didn't like.
Right.
And then independent of that, it depends on what work was happening on the movies that I was assigned to. So a lot of times it'd be meetings with writers, giving them notes on scripts to move the scripts forward. There would also be general meetings with directors and writers and actors. Like agents would call and say, hey, we'd love for you to meet this actress or love for you to meet this actor. And so, I would do a lot of generals just to, one, do a solid for the agent, but also a lot of times you meet someone on a general and you're like, oh, cool. You start to think of putting them in stuff.
Yeah.
And then, the other part of it was, doing a lot of breakfast, lunch, and dinners with agents and managers and, different players in the business. And so that was kind of, the job in a nutshell.
Wow.
And then at times at night, there would be reading of scripts, depending on what scripts would come in. Sometimes it'll be your project scripts. So like, let's say one night I'd get the new draft of Karate Kid. So I'd have to read that at night and be ready to talk about it the next day. Or let's say an agent has a new spec script that they're getting ready to sell and they want us to look at it. We'd have to read that overnight. And then sometimes as a studio executive, you have previews where a movie that you worked on that is in post-production, you preview it for an audience for the first time. And so they test it and score it. So we would do that. So as an executive, that's kind of what it was like. And a lot of incoming calls, a lot of, because when you're a studio executive, you're the buyer.
Yeah.
So everybody, wants you to buy one of
You're
their
the hot
projects.
girlfriend that everybody wants.
Absolutely. So then when I transitioned to producing and started my own company, it was great to have my own company, but it was like starting over.
Wow.
Because
What was the exit like from you leaving Sony? Something that you built your foundation.
Yeah.
What was that exit like?
It was actually amazing. I had done a film called Heaven is for Real as an executive, and I had made that film for like $14 million. It did close to $30 million in the first 5 days.
How much money do you get to take home? That's what people really want to know.
Not a lot, because I was an executive, so
Right.
I didn't participate in that way. But 2 days after opening weekend, I quit. And,
Wow.
And I told the chairman, I was like, look, I'm quitting. I said, I'm starting my own company, because at that point in time, I had made like 4 or 5, faith-based movies in a row that were successful.
Successful, yeah.
And I was like, man, I'm making these movies for you all, and I can't participate in any of them in terms of a financial participation.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm quitting. I want to start my company. And I said, I want you to give me a deal.
Right.
And she agreed. She was like, cool. Because she was like, listen, as long as you're making movies for us, however you want to make them, we're going to take it.
And what was the term sheet on that deal? What did that look like?
Man, it was very little. You know what I mean? Like,
But that's the thing. Sometimes you have to compromise just to get what
absolutely.
you want.
Absolutely.
A lot of people don't want to do that.
No, but the thing about it is, and I'll come back to Eve to answer more of the question, but, I embarked upon my own company about 10 years ago because Heaven is for Real came out 10 years ago this month.
Wow.
And so it was right around this time. It has taken me 10 years as a producer to finally get to the place where it's about to pay off.
What?
Yes.
Make sure that audio.
Jeez. And
Yes.
people don't understand the timeline of how long it really takes to be
takes.
successful.
It takes. I'm just at this next wave of movies and deals that I have over the next, couple of years. Finally, it's like, okay, it's starting to pay off. But it's been
Right.
10 years of Bishop Jakes talks about this idea of like, you're on, this was in a book that he came out with years ago, but it was like, he's like, you go from 1 to 10 on one level. He said, but when you go to that next level, you don't go up to that level on 10.
10,
You
yeah.
go back to 1.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you got to go up to 10 and you go up to another level and you go, and so that has been very true. That is just now where it's all starting to, pay off. Financially pay off, in a way that it's like, oh, okay.
How did you handle that mentally? You're like, I'm making all these people so much money. Did you feel a little bit bitter? Like, man, when it's going to be my turn to shine? In a sense, financially.
Yeah.
Because you want to have a house, you wanted to do this.
Sure. I was enjoying, making movies and getting things made.
Okay.
So, I was like, okay, I may not be making, all the money that I want on this or whatever, but I'm getting it done. It's happening. So I'm still getting a lot out of it. I do love producing. I do love, making movies. I love making TV shows. So that was fulfilling.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, now that I've kind of gotten some of these projects underneath my belt, now let me think even more about the finances and how to level up there. Right. And so no, there weren't times when I was frustrated about it. It was just more of like, oh, I'm having fun doing this.
Right.
Now, what are the things that I need to do to, increase the compensation for doing that? If that makes sense. So as a producer, day to day, it's a lot of outgoing calls. It's a lot of like, okay, I need to find movies to produce. I need to find ideas to produce. So you're doing a lot of reading. You're meeting with a lot of literary managers and you're fielding different ideas. You're reading scripts. You're reading books. You're trying to figure out like, okay, what can I sell to a studio? What are they going to want to buy? And for me, one of my differentiating factors has been faith.
Right.
Now, like when I came into Hollywood, 18 years old, even though I was a man of faith, I never thought at that time that faith would play a role in my career success.
Yeah.
I just thought that was just something that I am.
Yeah.
But I had no idea at 18, 22, even 30 that, faith is going to be your path. And that's that's going to build your brand. And that's what people are going to know about you. Had no idea. I had worked on Pursuit of Happiness as an executive, and we did it. And I put together a whole faith-based marketing campaign for that film, and that film was very successful. But I didn't really think like, oh, okay, that means now, faith is the thing. Right. I just kept being passionate. I was passionate about movies. I was passionate about entertainment. I was passionate about faith. So that passion, as a producer, I said, okay, well, I have to, continue to make movies that are in line with my passion. So that led me to make Miracles from Heaven and The Star and Breakthrough and Flamin' Hot and Kingdom Business. And the interesting thing about that was as I started to focus on my passion, people told me before I came in this business, oh, there's no way that someone of faith can be successful.
Right.
You have to compromise, Hollywood of Sodom and Gomorrah, all these things. Now, listen, everybody has a different experience in this business. I'm just telling you what my experience was. The more I honored my faith, the more doors open. Yeah. I mean, seriously, like honestly, like if I kept my faith separate and didn't embrace it fully and boldly in the lights of Hollywood or in the pews of the church, I would not be sitting before you right now. Because if I was trying to just make it as a producer independent of my faith, I wouldn't have as many opportunities as I have right now. Jesus. What opens the doors, the deals that I have on the table, the movies I'm getting ready to make, the TV shows that I'm getting ready to make, the deals that I have are because of faith. Because I'm open about it and I live it, and I'm able to communicate to an audience that is still underserved, that Hollywood doesn't quite understand. Right. But I do. That all came from going back to the idea of the seed. I had to be open. I had to be open. I couldn't just say, oh, I know how I'm supposed to grow. I don't. Right. I'm a seed. And that seed has got a whole tree in it.
Yeah.
Think about it. That seed, that little seed. But guess what? It's got to be broken open.
Yeah.
That seed cannot grow unless it breaks open. And one of the greatest things that gets broken open in the process is our mindset. You got to get your mind broken open. You got to open up your mind that just what you see here is not all that there is.
Right.
And being open about that, then faith was able to rise in a way that I had nothing to do with. All I did was I was just honest about it. Yeah. I observed in Hollywood. I would tell people, hey, before I take this job, I need you to know I observe the Sabbath.
Okay, so, why do you observe the Sabbath? Is it because of your previous foundation, the Seventh-day Adventist?
Yeah, that was part of it. Definitely being raised in the Seventh-day Adventist faith. It's a Christian denomination, and Sabbath observance is a big part of.
Can you explain to people what is the Sabbath and
Sure. So the Sabbath. So going back to Bible days, the way that time was calculated was the evening and then the morning. So the evening started a new day. And so it's almost the inverse now, right? So once the sun went down, like let's say whatever today is Thursday. So when sun goes down, that's when Friday starts.
Right.
In the way that they used to do time. So the Sabbath is, so if you look at creation, it says that God rested on the seventh day and he blessed the seventh day and he hallowed it. So that seventh day, when you look at Jewish tradition and Jesus being a Jew, they would take Sabbath off. So Friday night sundown to Saturday night sundown would be a day of no work.
Right.
And so I was raised with that practice, you know, as a day of no work. So for me, it was, some people look at it as an Old Testament construct, but I look at it as an Old and a New Testament. Why? Because let's say we get out of theology just for a moment.
Yeah.
If I am a follower of Christ, then I believe that the example that Christ led when he lived here is suitable for me to follow.
Oh my goodness.
So if Christ, the one I follow, observe the Sabbath, then why wouldn't I?
So all Christians should be observing the Sabbath.
I believe that. I do. I absolutely believe it. I absolutely believe it. And I don't think I would be as successful today if I did not observe the Sabbath.
Tomorrow I'm observing the Sabbath.
I'm telling you.
Okay,
I'm telling
what
you.
do you do during the Sabbath? Like,
Yes,
I
yes.
never, like, we didn't know growing up. I grew up Southern Baptist, so, like,
Yeah.
observing the Sabbath is so new.
It's like I was observing the Sabbath.
Exactly, yeah. Sunday is like observing the Sabbath.
We go to church and we chill.
Right. Well, Sabbath observance, you know, there's, trust me, from the time I was young to now,
Right.
you know, especially within the, you know, Seventh-day Adventist community, there's always a debate about what you can do or should do. And so at the end of the day, you know, we all have to kind of find our own way.
Right.
But for me, you know, I really take that day off from work. So what that looked like as an executive, it mean I would turn off my email. It would mean on Friday night, sundown, if I got calls, you know, from work, I wouldn't take them. You know, I wouldn't read scripts. There was a time when I was in Beijing as an executive working on The Karate Kid, and I'm on set Friday with Jackie Chan and Jaden and Will and Jada. And, you know, we're shooting this scene in this Hutong, which was a, you know, an ancient neighborhood. It's a Friday in Beijing. It's sun's about to go down. And I get out of there and get back to the hotel. I do, you know.
Glad you.
And they're like, we understand.
Wow.
We respect it, you know. And so usually on the Sabbath, you know, I was raised going to church on Sabbath.
Yes.
So, you know, sometimes I do that. Other times, you know, if I'm not going to church, you know, I'll look at different sermons, you know, online. Sometimes I'll go hike. Sometimes I'll read the word. Sometimes I'll journal. Sometimes I'll be preparing for a message. It's really a day of, you know, recharging, getting back in touch with God.
Yeah.
You know, I spend time with my family. We do Sabbath dinners where the whole family comes together and we eat and we talk and we fellowship with one another. So it's really about taking out a day where you're not working like you are on the other 6 days. And we were not built to run 24/7.
Yeah.
We weren't. I mean, did God need to rest? I don't think so.
Right.
But if God chose to rest, then what about us?
Yeah. Right.
You know, if that's in our foundation, that God rested on the seventh day and he hallowed it, why would we then say, well, I don't need to rest. I'm just going to grind. Well, if you keep grinding, you're going to get ground down.
Wow.
You know, so for me, for taking that Sabbath rest, man, and taking that Sabbath, I'm telling you, it is, I believe it's really the secret of the secret for me in terms of, you know, my success. Not only because for people that look at me as a person of faith in Hollywood, they say, oh, he's really serious about it because, you know, he does observe the Sabbath and I've tried to reach him during this period of time and he won't take my call. Right. Like they know that. But the other part of it is that I can come back into work refreshed.
Yeah.
I can come back into work renewed.
Right.
I can come back into work with a different mindset.
Right.
Because I've taken that 24-hour period to unplug. Yeah. You know, like even now, like I don't check social media, you know, on Sabbath. You know, I really try to just unplug and recharge.
Do you watch movies?
If it's a religious movie. Yeah.
Oh,
but
really?
no, like I won't go to like a secular movie, so to speak.
No Spider-Man.
No Spider-Man. No. But like, you know, I mean, if there was a faith-based movie in a theater, I would go see it. I have no problem, you know, doing that. But it's really about like, okay.
That spiritual
it's
connection.
Spiritual.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
What's that spiritual connection? And if I'm watching something, how is it going to, you know, edify me or improve me or enlighten me, you know? So that's kind of how I approach, you know, Sabbath. And again, as I mentioned earlier, everybody has a different way.
Right. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you know, I just come down on the side of like, you know, there's a scripture that talks about, you know, if you would turn away your foot from doing your pleasure on the Sabbath. And so, you know, what is pleasure to you may not be to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that I believe the scripture still leaves room for interpretation.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, I still believe that the scripture, old and new, support the value of Sabbath observance.
Sheesh. That's great to digest, baby.
So I want to jump into.
I want to do Franklin Entertainment.
Yeah, we're gonna do Franklin Entertainment, and then let's jump in because we know most of it.
Yeah.
Franklin Entertainment. We want to lose when you lost Franklin Entertainment.
Not
okay, yeah,
really
yeah.
losing. It's
But
just transcendent.
Sure.
So you go leave Sony and get to Franklin Entertainment. You get a Paramount deal.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is you at the top of the world right now. Everyone's looking at you. It's like, go Devon, go.
Yeah.
Hot Cheetos.
Hot Cheetos, man. It's like, what did that take? I mean, what did it take to start Franklin Entertainment and also to pivot and walk away from Franklin?
Not really walk away. But
Yeah, but I mean, but yeah.
change.
So just for context, so
Yeah.
the way that it works in on the film side, even the TV side, most people that have companies have those companies because they have a first look deal with a major studio or streamer that funds the overhead for that company.
Right.
Wow.
So when I got my first overhead, first look deal, Sony was paying the overhead for the company. So they're paying, for the assistant, they're paying for the office space, they're paying for the
And
executive.
this is the office on Sunset.
No, the first one was an office on the Sony lot.
Oh,
and it was just me and an assistant.
Wow.
That they were paying for. So then I made Miracles from Heaven for them, started The Star, and then I moved my deal to Fox.
Oh.
So I had a deal at Fox. Yeah, I had amazing office space over on Olympic and, right next to the Fox lot overlooking Santa Monica. It was amazing.
Yeah.
And so I made Breakthrough for Fox and I set up Flamin' Hot.
What year was this?
This would have been 2017, 18.
So Flamin' Hot had an inception 2017.
Yeah, I think I met Richard in 2017. I think I set it up in 2018, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it took
a long
took time. So so right before Breakthrough came out, Fox got sold to Disney.
Right.
So then Disney didn't pick up any deals.
Wow.
So not that I wanted to leave Fox, I was loving working at Fox, but because that happened, then Paramount was like, "Hey, we'll give you, a first look deal." So I went to Paramount, and
So to stop you right there, I want to, for the audience that don't know, what does a first look deal look like? What does that mean?
so sure, absolutely. So a first look deal means a company or a streamer will give you. So if I was going to do a first look deal with you all, I would pay for your overhead, pay for your company, and in exchange, you give me a first look on any material you want to produce. And so I get the first right to say yes.
Okay.
And if I want to do it, we do it. And if I don't, I pass on it and you can take it to anybody else. So that's what a first look basically means. It means that that company gets a first look at whatever material you want to produce.
Right. Okay.
So when I went to Paramount, I got my first look deal there. And then there was the people that brought me in were, the head of the studio who was a friend. And then, the head of business affairs who was a friend. And that's one thing I also will say is relationships.
Yeah.
Relationships. Like too often we're looking at the result. We're not looking at the relationship.
Right.
Because you say, well, I want the result. It's like, okay. But if you ruin relationships to get a result, that's actually not going to serve you long term. And the thing that I have always cultivated in this business are relationships, period. They are the lifeblood for everything. So when I went to Paramount, they gave me the deal. And then in that first year, so there was one particular movie that I brought them that said, this is what I want to make. And they were like, okay, great. Let's work on the script. Let's put on a director. So we were focused on that one movie. So then the heads of Paramount end up leaving. So they bring in some new heads. And so that was cool because one of the heads that they brought in used to be over at Fox. So I'm like, okay, cool. So the one, and I had set up a couple other projects, but I was really focused on the one that I was going to make.
All right.
And Paramount also gave me more money, so I was able to get the great office space over on Sunset.
What does money look like?
Those are all your numbers.
People want to know.
It was a $500,000.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely over $500,000.
Okay.
And then I was able to get great office space and hire a bunch of executives and whatnot. So I signed that deal with Paramount in November of 19, 6 months before the strike hit. I mean, not the strike, the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. So the pandemic hits. And so, the whole world changes. And I'm still working on that one movie. After the pandemic kind of subsides, they bring in, these new chairman over at Paramount and whatnot.
This shit always happens.
Yep. Then I thought like, okay, I'll be all right. And then within a year's time, they end up leaving and they bring in, another chairman. And then that chairman says, well, we don't want to make that movie. The one movie. Yeah, exactly.
That you've been working
The
on.
one movie I've been working on for like 2 years at that point.
Jeez Louise.
So development takes time.
Right.
You know, so like the other projects that I had, they just weren't ready to go. So then when Paramount was looking at my deal, they were like, well, you know, we haven't gotten any movies out of the deal. And I know, but this is how it works. It's
crazy. It's like, I'm working on it.
I know, it's crazy. And also because the current leadership didn't bring me in, they don't have any
Stake in the
ownership of me, you know what I mean, or my account or what I'm doing, because it's like, well, you know, the old regime brought him in, so that's their thing. And so usually when a new regime comes in, there is a lot of turnover and there's a lot of change because whoever's running the company wants to make it theirs. So as a part of all that, they did not renew my deal. And so that's when, you know, you talk about losing Franklin Entertainment. I didn't necessarily lose it, but I had to downsize.
Right.
You know, I had to lay off, you know, multiple people working for the company. I had to let go of the office space. I had to start working from home.
How did you handle that?
I mean, just coming from a friggin' pandemic was a lot, but also to lose, to like downsize.
Going through the hills and valleys of your life and just the VP stuff, and then now just Frank. How are you handling that
You
experience?
say, God, what's going on? Are you supposed to be going like this? It's going like,
What is going
Exactly.
on?
No, I mean, it definitely had those. I had those days of like, okay,
you become a
God.
joke.
You know, right. Literally. I'm like, God, what are we doing?
Yeah.
How's this working?
Right.
You know, I'm like, okay, you know, I go back.
Also, the
and,
relationship was at this time was a little bit uncertain too at this time. as well.
it certainly was. Yeah, it was all these things happening all at once. And it was difficult. And part of what happened, you know, during that period of time was I started getting, I got a life coach to kind of, you know, start helping me, you know, figure out some things, you know, emotionally, mentally, how to plan. I also got a therapist.
Was you like battling a little slight depression in a sense? Because you was losing a lot of stuff, and mentally as a man, it's kind of hard. Most men don't have nobody to talk to.
Right. I wouldn't say I was depressed. You know, I was more confused. I was more confused. I was trying to understand, like, okay, well, how does this work? Why does this work this way? What am I doing wrong? I mean, that was probably the question that was most prevalent. And that was a lot of the exploration that I was doing with the life coach that I had and with my therapist at the time, to try to figure out how to navigate this. And one of the greatest things that came out of it was, you know, we talked about earlier, like, okay, growing up, that achievement thing became my identity.
Yeah.
So what happened was like, okay, as all these things started to shake, because I wasn't rooted in me, I'm still rooted in the achievements.
Yeah.
So then as the achievements started to shake, then my own self-worth started to shake. And so a lot of the work with the therapist and the life coach was to have a disconnect between the achievements and my own value. To know that nothing out here has anything to do with the value in here. That I still am who I am. You know, even a good stock goes through its moments, but it's still a stock you invest in.
Right.
And so a lot of that work was so helpful so that I wouldn't attach myself and my well-being to things. That was really important, so important, so that I can enjoy what happens, but I'm not basing my self-worth on what does or doesn't happen professionally. And that work was very helpful for me to navigate so much loss. So I had to say, okay, you know, can I still... You know, my view in the office used to be, you know, overlooking, you know, the Sunset Hills and, you know, the lush mansions and all that.
Now you're at Skid Row.
I'm not on Skid Row. It ain't that bad, you know. But now it's like, you know, being at home.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, but God's like, can you still feel like who I've created you to be?
Wow.
Can you still feel it, or do you need the view to feel it?
Come on.
You know what I mean? Like, no, can you still feel like a CEO and you're looking at a wall?
Yes.
You know, and that was the shift that needed to happen for me.
Right.
Is to still get in a feeling place of value and of self-worth that wasn't attached to any of these achievements. So then, you know, as I was able to kind of allow those things to pass and to allow my story to be rewritten, so to speak. You know, as I'm getting into this season, you know, there have been some things and deals, something I can't talk, one of them I can't talk about yet because we haven't announced it, but like, it's like, it all works and it all makes sense. You know what I mean? So the deal that I currently have on the table, you know, for films is a much better, it's probably the best deal I've ever had to be able to make the films that I want to make and to be able to be compensated in a way that I haven't been before in a consistent way as well. So, you know, if I could have kept the Paramount deal or a situation like that or this, I would choose this.
But you didn't know this was coming.
No, exactly. Had no idea. So I just had to commit to the process. Had to commit to the process. Like, okay, you know what? Me losing this Paramount deal is of no fault of my own in that, like, I did everything that I could do, you know, and in terms of finding projects and submitting projects and trying to make sure that I was giving a good return on my investment. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. So I say, okay, you know, let me just take that and learn. And then part of the thing that I also learned was just, you know, a lot of times when you have a deal, you know, you're hiring people to facilitate that deal.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I need support, but at the end of the day, a lot of this has to come through me.
Yeah.
Right.
So God put me in a situation now where it's like, it's got to come through you. It's got to come through you. So yes, I'm going to give you the best deal you've had, but it's going to be the most unique deal. So it's not going to come.
You deal.
Absolutely. And part of the you deal is it's not going to come with the type of support you've had before. You're going to have to do it.
Wow.
And when you do it, you'll be rewarded better than you have before. But like, you can't outsource this. You can't outsource this. You got to do it. And I don't know that I would have been able to step into this if I hadn't gone through what I went through. You know, so everything that I went through was necessary. And I'm still going through it and still, you know, what is going to happen tomorrow? I have no idea. But I'm so grateful for the process because it's helped me become who I am and it's helped me get perspective. And one of the things that was so interesting is before I got this new film deal, I had Flamin' Hot that came out last year.
We want to talk Flamin'
and
Hot,
Hulu. And cool, we'll talk whatever you want. And around that time, I was looking for another deal for my company for on the film side. And there was, you know, there were basically no options. Nobody wanted to do it. Nobody was interested. And, you know, I was having this conversation with my agent, you know, and the conversation was like, well, you know, should I pivot from faith? You know, should I pivot from faith and kind of do more inspirational or aspirational content to try to make myself, you know, be perceived within the Hollywood circles as being broader, you know, and that I can do more than just that. And, you know, we had a lot of conversations about that. But ultimately, I was like, I just have to stay the course.
Yeah.
You know, this is who I am. This is who I am. I am a man of faith. This is what I'm passionate about. This is the content that I make. So, you know, and this is what I've invested in. And then, you know, months later, the deal that I just signed, I get the deal because of faith.
The thing is, you never compromise. Even though you're at the tipping point, you're like, maybe I should compromise.
Maybe.
I could do this.
Yeah.
How did you stay strong without compromising? Because some of us, you know, we walk through life and we were people of faith, but we also dibble and dabble into so many different avenues. And how do you not compromise? It's like, how do you just say, I'm not doing that, no matter what? Even if you're thinking about it, you know, how do you say, I'm not doing it? And how do you get the information?
Being
And who do you,
disciplined.
yeah, how do you, who do you surround yourself with?
Okay, so it's the key is to harmonize, not compromise.
Come on. Harmonize, not compromise.
Yeah, so here's what I mean by that. Right now, we're in this podcast studio.
Right.
If this building is compromised, it's not safe to be in it. Right?
Right.
But this building, this particular room has to harmonize in its design with all the other rooms.
Right.
It didn't compromise. Right? So with our career, we can't compromise who we are, but we can find a way to harmonize who we are with the opportunity. So the opportunity, going back to being an intern. Okay, here's what's being required of me as an intern. Okay, you know, you need to be on time. You need to be a hard worker. You need to be a self-starter. You got to be a people person. Okay, great. So the qualifications of the job, then I harmonize who I am with them. I don't have to compromise who I am to do the job. No, I have to find a way to find harmony between who I am and what's being expected. That's the key. So with Hollywood, it's been a constant process of harmonizing. How do I harmonize here to give them what they need, but for me to still do the job and still be who I am? And that has been my guiding principle, because the moment that I'm compromised, it's all going to crumble. Right? Because the compromising of the foundation means it's not strong. Right. And so if my foundation isn't strong, if it's compromised, then eventually it's going to cause some damage. Think about it. Right. Anything you go into that's compromised is not safe.
Right.
It's not going to last.
Right.
So for me, I was like, okay, I got to harmonize with this situation. And if I can't find harmony, then it's not for me.
I think you can even use that in relationships.
Absolutely.
How do you apply that to relationships when you're like getting to, especially these days, it's like
it's tough.
So many things, like social media, I think is so toxic for relationships.
You think so?
I think it's literally destroying the relationship between men and women.
Yeah.
I think right now.
I mean, but that's the perception of socialization too. If you perceive that it's destroying men and women, that's going to destroy that. Because I mean, a lot of people see the constant battle between women wants this and men wants this, and they don't find the harmony between it.
Yeah.
And how do you step away and just like, you know what? I'm not going to resort to this.
And how do you stay a man? Like, I'm going to be a provider and also not fall into the trap of like, oh, I got to fly her out or I got to do this and do that. And
I mean, we throwing a lot of stuff at you right now.
I know, it's all right.
It's cool. You know, part of it is like, you know, with a relationship, you know, again, it's like harmony is you sing your note, you sing your note, I sing my note, and we find a way for it to all sound great. Right now, if I'm not willing to adjust my pitch, I can still sing the same note, but I got to change my pitch. If I'm not willing to adjust my pitch to harmonize with your note, then I'm not going to be a great partner.
Ooh. So, how do you communicate that?
Well, part of it, first of all, it starts with self.
Okay.
I have to know who I am. I have to know what are my non-negotiables, what are my core values, what are my core beliefs. And as I understand that, then I understand what I need to harmonize with, or who I need to harmonize with, right? If I don't know who I am and I haven't taken that time to really think about, well, what matters to me the most? What are the things that, okay, everything over here I'm able to negotiate, but these things I can't negotiate. If you or I don't know that, we're going to compromise ourselves.
Right.
Because we're going to find ourselves stepping off of those things. And even though at times we may not be conscious of it, our subconscious is aware. So you know when you're with somebody and you've overextended yourself and you can't even articulate it sometimes, but you're like, man, I don't
feel drained.
Yes. It's because I'm compromised.
Whoa.
I'm compromised because I did not stand on my truth. And when I stand on my truth, whatever it may be, and everybody has a different set of core beliefs and core values and non-negotiables, but whatever that is, if you honor it in the relationship and you're with a partner who says, oh, okay, cool, there's some harmony there. Like, oh, okay, you value sobriety, I value sobriety. You know, you value fitness, I value fitness. Okay, great. We can harmonize in our core values. So that way no one has to compromise who they are.
Right.
We can then find the harmony, like, oh, okay, cool. This is how we're going to do this together. When it comes to a relationship, when it comes to finding that harmony, it's about knowing who you are, and then you can better evaluate who the right match is.
A lot of people just look at lustful eyes instead of actually looking for harmonization.
Absolutely. And to your point about, you know, being a man, you know, we have to say, okay, well, what does it mean to be a man, right? You talk about, you know, flying a woman out, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you may choose that that's what you want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that choice if that's what works for you. I think the key is not feeling like I'm not a man if I don't. Or I'm not a man if I don't have the resources to do that. That's the difference. It's like, hey, you know what? If that's something that I have the resources to do and I choose to do it, and it's the person that I want to do that for and they're cool, okay. But I'm not going to talk myself into a false narrative about manhood because I don't have the resources to do that. Right? Because at the end of the day, those resources and doing that for someone is very easy.
Right.
But can you be emotionally vulnerable with someone? Can you be emotionally available? Can you be present? Can you be consistent? Can you be caring? Can you be considerate? Those things to me are real signs of manhood. Not if you have enough money to fly somebody around the country.
Right. Oof. Gee, that's the principles right there, man. We gotta. I put it in bullet points. What you just said.
Okay.
Man, it's a bad help. I do have one last question about relationships, and then we can go back to other stuff. Where did these tattoos come from?
Okay.
Everybody want to know.
Yeah, man. So this is Live Free, and this was actually the title of one of my books.
Okay.
And I had always wanted to get a tattoo. I mean, back since high school, and but just because of church and faith and religion, I was like, oh, I don't want people.
My mom is a super Christian with a K, and she would say her first name is missionary.
There you go. So you understand.
If I get a tattoo, my
Oh
mom is
man,
like,
what are you doing?
Right, exactly.
And so for years, I just said, okay, I'm not going to do it. And then when I was making Flamin' Hot, I made it in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And there's a tattoo culture in New Mexico is huge.
Yeah.
And so pretty much everyone on our crew had tattoos. And so one of my friends who worked on the crew, like the last week of production, she's like, okay, you're gonna get a tattoo tonight. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, I'm not. And she's like, no, you've been asking about him this whole time, and my tattoo artist has made time for you tonight. I said, but we're not wrapping until like 9 o'clock. She's like, it's okay, he'll wait. I'm like, oh God. So she's like, well, what would you want? And I said, well, if I was gonna get something, I'd want Live Free in Bruce Lee's handwriting. Oh, this is Bruce Lee's handwriting. So she got that information to her tattoo artist, and he did an outline, and she came back and showed me on the phone. I said, okay, it's cool. We'll see. So we wrapped, and, we wrapped like around 9. And I said, hey, I'm sure he's gone. She's like, no, he's waiting for you. I'm like, so I go to the tattoo.
So you was like, let's throw it off.
Exactly. So I go to the tattoo shop, and he's a great guy. And he said, listen, here's what we'll do. We'll put the outline on, and you don't have to do it. Just take a look at it. If you like it, cool. If you don't, you don't. So he put the outline on, and I was like, oh, man,
Okay.
that was kind of cool. So I was like, bet, let's just do it. So I did it, and I couldn't believe it, and also it was like right around the time when things were kind of, crazy in my marriage and stuff. So I was like, man, let me just get that. So I got it. And went to set the next day, had it wrapped up and everything.
Yeah, like, what's going on?
And then, well, first they didn't know, but then like it got hot, so I took off my sweatshirt. Like, oh, you got a tattoo? Like, yeah. So then I left Albuquerque and I went to Atlanta to produce Kingdom Business. And I really liked having the left forearm done, but I felt like, man, I just need the balance. For me, I was like, the one is cool, but I think I need two.
Yeah.
So then I was thinking about, well, what do I really want to do? And even though the marriage was kind of reaching its end, I was like, I still believe in love.
Yes.
And so that's why I got this. And so the same artist that did the outline for this did this, but a different artist, filled it in.
Right. Wow.
And I did that in Atlanta. And so that's the story behind the tattoos. And I just wanted things on me.
Yeah.
Just to remind me, of mantras to live by.
Yeah.
Live free, love wins, be true.
What does it mean for you to live free?
What it means is, a little bit of what we talked about earlier, which is like just even getting the tattoos is living free for me.
Yes.
Right? Because I'm going to be free. That's right. I'm going to be free from other people's opinions.
Yes.
Of who they think I should be or what they think I should do.
Yes.
And I'm going to live in a way that honors the truth of who God created me to be.
Yeah.
And part of life, right? We are spirit and flesh. Part of life, this experience, is that. It's experience. None of us have children, but like my, older brother, younger brother, they have children. When that child starts to walk and it falls, there's no condemnation there. That's a part of the experience.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if a child falls as they're learning to walk and the parent is like, what's wrong with you? You need to get it together. You need to feel bad that you just fell.
Right.
Do you know how bad that is? That would be horrible for the development of that child.
Right.
But that's what happens with us. In this thing called life, we are God's children, and we are experiencing how to navigate life daily. No one has mastered this experience.
Right.
And there are going to be times as we live free that we will fall, that we will bump our head, that we will make mistakes. God's not sitting there saying, what's wrong with you?
Right.
He's just like a parent with the kid walking. Hey, it's okay. Come on, get up. You're still alive. This experience is here for you to learn. And you sometimes will learn from the things that didn't go the way you wanted. So part of living free is embracing that. It's embracing that. Doesn't mean I'm going to get it right. That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will do is try to live truthfully. I will try to be honest about this experience that we're having and allow myself to be human enough to experience it. If we were just supposed to be spirit, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
There's something about this human experience that we need as spiritual beings. And again, I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that I understand it all. I don't.
Right.
I do not. The mystery, the understanding God and, how it all works is still beyond my comprehension. I do my best to understand
crazy.
it. I do my best to teach as much as I understand, but there's so much that I don't understand. And that humbles me.
Yeah, I know.
I don't sit here having the expertise and how all these things work. No, but I can tell you what I believe. I can tell you what I'm experiencing. And I trust that the more I stay curious about this thing called life, that God will continue to reveal even more about what this experience has meant for us and what it can do. So that's a long answer to your question, but for me, that's what live free means.
One more question my mom wanted me to ask you. Do you want to have kids?
Yes, I'm like, man, I'm about to be, I'm about to be.
I'm about to be 35.
I'm about to be
so we're
46,
like,
so I'm like, yo, I got to do it. Yes.
Yeah, we go through this life and it's like, okay, when is that time?
When is that time?
When do
When
you
do you-
feel like, because we never feel like it's that
Not
time.
time. It's like, I got to make more money. Oh, I need a house first. I need an apartment. I need
We always
something.
try to seek provisions to have a
Sure.
family. And when did you feel like it's that time for you?
Because you can raise kids by yourself.
Yeah, but I would have thought that I would have had children by now.
Right.
But just the way that life worked out, it just has not happened. So, when I look at it now, I say, okay, I feel more ready to be a father given my experiences and my disposition and also my contentment level in life. I feel like, okay, I'm at a good contentment level. And I feel like, if I were to have a child today or next couple of years, I feel like I'm ready for that, even more ready than I was before. But there is no, right time. And I think everybody has to kind of assess for them, especially if you're talking about planning a child.
Yeah.
I have also heard, one of my friends, they have 2 kids and they were like, listen, babies bring blessings,
Right.
That they didn't know how they were going to be able to afford, the children, but they felt that God was calling them to have them. And as they had, their first child, like God provided, major resources for them. So there's also that way to look at it. Like if you feel God is calling you to start a family, then I would be obedient and do that and trust that He will provide the provision, or maybe He'll say, hey, you know what, I'm going to give you this provision and then you can do it. Everybody's going to do it differently.
Right.
But for me, I don't have like a set of things that I need to achieve or be before I do that.
Right.
I want to be married for sure. And I guess in a perfect world, maybe I'd be married for, a little while before I start having the kids.
Just know the person.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe, like, hey, let's, hey, we love each other. Let's go. I don't know. I don't know yet. But
Spirit-led.
well, that's right. Exactly. Be spirit-led. Exactly.
And I think Will Smith said something that was very eye-opening for me. It's like the child still won't bring you happiness. You have to be happy within yourself.
Correct.
And you said that earlier is like being whole within yourself.
That's right.
First.
That's right.
And I guess you could speak to that a little bit more as like, how do you be happy within yourself before
Where do
having
you? I mean, I don't. It's nobody. I think nobody really knows to find this elusive happiness. But where can you start?
Well, you can start with evaluating your current happiness attachments.
Where do you find these stuff? Who are you? You're not a human being. What the heck?
You asked the question. I'm just answering the question, man.
How do you come up with You're insane. You're literally unnatural.
Happiness attachments.
Yes. What are the things currently that my happiness is attached to? So it starts right there, right? Okay. So I'm attached to, dressing a certain way. I'm attached to driving a certain car. I'm attached to having my place a certain thing. So you look at all the attachments and then you start to play and do an exercise. Okay, if I can't dress this way, can I still be happy? Well, I need to dress this way to be happy. Oh, okay. So don't judge it. Don't judge it. Why? Why are you so attached to the clothes you wear that are external for something that is internal? Why? What about these clothes produce a feeling in you that you could produce if you wanted to. That's where it starts. It's not just like, oh, be happy. It's like, well, what is my happiness attached to? And let me go through the process of identifying, okay, if I didn't have, why do I need these clothes? Oh, I need these clothes because I actually don't feel like I look good without them. Oh, okay, well, why don't I feel like I look good without them? Because when I look in the mirror, I don't feel I'm attractive. But why don't I feel that I'm attractive? Well, because when I was younger, you know, the kids used to always talk about me, or my family always used to make fun of me. So I made a decision at that age, I'm never going to be made fun of this way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dress a certain way so nobody can say nothing.
The source of the trauma.
Exactly. So doing this exercise, if you are open enough with yourself, helps you get down to the root. It's like, oh, got it. So I'm going back all the way to say, wow, I got to work on feeling good about me. I got to work on like really looking at me saying, I am attractive.
Yeah.
I am attractive in my way. And I got to start cultivating that. And you can cultivate that through affirmations. You can cultivate that through therapy. You can cultivate that through reading, journaling, like whatever it is, but just the awareness. Hey, I got to start finding myself more attractive. And as I do that, that happiness that comes from that, it starts from the inside and it goes out. So then I'm not putting on something to make me happy. I'm putting on something because it's an extension of who I already am.
This is the book right here, man.
I'm literally so full right now. I just spit stuff. I'm like, we gotta go to like the last.
Let's go back to Hollywood.
No, last question. A couple last questions.
What time is that?
I know, we gotta get ready to get out of here.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
This is five, two more minutes.
I got a lunch in about
Yeah, we got.
Like, let's just go straight to last question.
Okay.
Last question is gonna take a little bit.
Okay. Last question is, then we go through this journey of life and we go through our ups and downs. I think we talked about going through ups and downs. What do you think is the purpose of life? And also, have you found what you're looking for in life? If you come, when it's all said and done, you meet God face to face and said, Devon, you have done very well. What do you think is the purpose of life? And have you found what you're looking for in life?
What is the purpose of life? I don't sit here having that answer. I don't actually know. And when I hear that question, I think about, okay, well, why did God create this experience called life that we as humans are living out? Why was this a necessary part of our spiritual journey? I don't really know. You know, I don't know. And you know, when we get to heaven, I look forward to having the opportunity to ask the question. Help me understand why we needed to do this. You know, with that being said, you know, there's a scripture that talks about, you know, God saying, you know, well done, my good and faithful servant. And so for me, you know, when I think about a life well lived, I think about that idea, you know, God saying to me, you know, well done, my good and faithful servant. And what would he be saying well done in? In the things that I gave you to do and who I called you to be. You committed to those things, you serviced those things, you cultivated those things, you committed to that process. And as a result of that, not only did you become, but you helped others become. You helped others find me. You helped others find a path of peace, and you've helped others find a path of joy. You helped others find a path of Christ. And so as a result, job well done. That's how I look at it, right? So as much as I may not fully understand life, I do
You have a mission statement.
Yeah, I do believe, you know, I'm on this earth to help inspire, inform, and uplift people's spirits, you know, and I do that through preaching and writing books and acting and producing and being on TV. I mean, anything that I'm doing, you can look at the whole body of work. It's completely geared towards that. There's nothing in the body of work that won't uplift somebody in some way. Whether it's a social media post, whether it's, you know, a tweet, or whatever, it's all geared to that. So when I think of God, you know, what the meaning of life is for me, part of it is also doing what I was designed to do. And God saying, you did a great job in that. And then in terms of, you know, have I found what I'm looking for? Well, it's like yes and no, right? So I personally, you know, came into this earth looking for God, looking for a relationship with Christ, and then having those things early. So it's like, okay, so there's a growth in learning more about who God is and what it means to, follow Christ. And along the way, I had to then learn more about me. Who am I? How was I created? Why do I think the way that I do? What are my natural gifts and skills? And so the process of self-discovery for me is something that I'm still in. So have I found what I'm searching for? I feel like I'm on the path. I feel like I'm on the life path. So on some level, sure, I found it. I feel, and how do I know that? Because I feel the peace of it. I feel the progress of it. I feel the purpose of it, and I feel the prosperity of it. Those are the 4 things that let me know I'm on the right path. Now, that life path, there may be points in time where it gets a little more narrow, it gets a little wider, but I feel like I'm on it. I'm on it. I'm doing what I was created to do in the way that I was created to do it. And I can feel the peace of being in that alignment. And so, will I discover more? Sure, absolutely. But I feel really good about, going back to the time I was a kid, like, oh, this is the path. And I listened, and I didn't let anybody tell me, oh, you don't go to Hollywood, don't do this. No, I got to go follow my path, because that's what I feel, because I'm hearing that from God. And, here we are 26 years later, and there have been so many more things on the path, but I never would have experienced those things if I didn't get on it.
Right.
So I do believe that I'm going to learn a lot more, but I also feel the contentment of being on it. And last thing I'll say is, there's it's a tricky thing to say I'm not there yet, or I haven't experienced it yet, because then it's like, well, then I'm acknowledging the absence of it. And then if I acknowledge the absence of it, then it's hard for me to give myself the permission to feel good now. Right? So if I acknowledge I don't have it, then how can I feel good about me if I don't have it? So there's a temptation to say, well, I haven't found what I'm looking for. But then in that, it means we can never actually maximize the only thing we're given, which is this moment. That's it. Tomorrow doesn't exist in our experience. In God's experience, past, present, and future, it all exists. But for us, the only thing we have is now. So I need to have a mindset of, I am still learning, and I'm still exploring, and I'm still discovering, and I'm grateful for what I've discovered so far. So that way I can enjoy the present. Because if I say, oh, I'm not there yet, or I don't have it yet, then how can I enjoy this? And this is all we got.
And thank you so much, Devon. We're done. Thank you so much, my brother. It's been a pleasure,
man. That was,
man, we got so much gems in this.
I think we went to Harvard. We went to Harvard, man. I need a degree from Devon Franklin Academy. I mean, please, man. That should be
It's done.
Thank you so much,
my brother.
Thank
Thank you
y'all.
for coming,
Thank y'all.
man.
Man, thanks.